Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the, oh my gosh, it's November, isn't it? November meeting of, always happens, the November meeting of the Ulster County Transportation Council Policy Meeting. We'll do a roll call. I'm going to let Abe call the roll.
Okay, I'm going to name off the member agency, and if the member could just please state who they are. Ulster County, City of Kingston,
John Schulteis.
thank you. Town of Saugerties. I think I saw Leanne Thornton. Yep, I see you there, Leanne. We gotcha. Town of Ulster.
Fred Merrill. John, there you go.
Right.
Fred, yeah, I was back in Saugerties.
New York State DOT.
Yeah, we have online, we have Nicole Farmer, Caitlin Holt, and Amy McKenzie, and then here in person, Sandra Jobson.
New York State Thruway Authority.
Kristen Resnikoff.
Hey, Kristen. Town of Hurley. Town of Esopus. Town of Marlborough. Town of Shawangunk. Village of New Paltz. Town of Warsing. Town of Kingston. And Town of Rochester.
Mike Baden.
We have 9 members present. That's a quorum.
Any,
I can run through those on the line.
thank you very much.
On the line, we have Amy McKenzie from New York State DOT, Caitlin Holt, Cheryl Snyder, Chris Hannett, John Schulteis, Kristen Resnikoff, Leanne Thornton, Michael Gunther, Mike Baden, Nicole Farmer, Phil Erner, Ruth Ann Frank. And then I have a number dialed in and Ripley, who looks like they're connecting to audio, so I suspect that might be the phone number.
While I wait for them to connect, if the folks in the audience would like to identify themselves, you don't have to, but if you will.
Andrew Emmerich, Ulster County DPW. Ryan Baker, Ulster County DPW.
Robert Budick, Saugerties resident, and Kings Highway. Saugerties resident, Kings Highway.
Can you get that last phone number?
If the person with the number ending with 2500 could identify themselves, that'd be great.
It's not.
It's okay.
Okay, we'll move on. Call for citizens' comments. We'll start with in the room. Any citizens' comments in the room? Barbara?
Checking on the progress being made on the traffic counts in Kings Highway, and if anything has been legislator Petit had drafted a area representative for the railroad, and that has not gone out yet. And I was wondering if you had gotten a draft copy of that.
I have not received anything.
You did? Okay.
I haven't, no.
There
I'm
is,
just checking, I'm just having my eyes and
it has been a letter written by the Department of Public Works Subcommittee. And it's out as draft, it's being reviewed and probably will be sent within the next day or two.
great, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Herb, would they be willing to share that with the MPO?
Sure, I thought you guys were CC'd on it.
I didn't see one. Yeah.
Well, maybe when it's finalized.
Okay.
Yeah, I can have the clerk. That's maybe 10-year draft copy.
Thank you.
I see Bill has his hand raised online. Is there anyone else?
Legislator Erner? Online?
Thank you very much. First, I'd just like to remind the council about the upcoming budget votes in the legislature. As you may be aware, on the 30th, the Ways and Means Committee will consider the budget with amendments, and then on December 5th is the full legislature's vote. I, among others, have put in amendments concerning transportation and including public transportation. And although the public hearing period has passed, if the council has any thoughts about that, I'd certainly welcome hearing about them. My other comment today is concerning the Center for Post-Carbon Logistics based in the town of Rosendale. And I've recently completed reading their comments on the transportation sector of the New York State Climate Action Council draft scoping plan. And they have 8 policy recommendations in there, some of which I will be looking at us doing in the legislature, many of which need state or federal action, but I suspect some of which the council here could also take action on. I think they really have the right idea in terms of drawing down the carbon usage in the transportation sector, thinking about old technologies being new again, but also using what we've learned through the Industrial Revolution, successes and failures in terms of how we transport goods mainly is their focus. You've heard me in this space certainly talk about passenger transportation as well. And I'm going to put a link to their website in the chat, and I thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Legislator Erner. Any other comments from people in the room? I'm sorry, I went to. No? Any other comments from those remote? Hearing none?
Dennis, it's Mike Baden.
Cheryl has.
Mr. Baden, why don't you go first?
Okay. The Ulster County Trails Advisory Council, the last several months has been having a pretty robust discussion about e-bikes and an e-bike policy. I'm bringing it to this committee's attention because I think it's a discussion that we could possibly play a role in. There's a lot of discussion back and forth about the various types, should the policy be set based on type? Should it be set on weight? And the only thing that comes up each month is that there's very differing opinions. And so I'm just sort of bringing it to this group's attention. I think perhaps we could help the Trails Advisory Committee and in collaboration, maybe come up with some sort of idea. So I'm just putting it out there for consideration, not a specific action, but just for consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Baden. I thought I heard another comment. from
Sure,
someone.
I believe Cheryl Snyder wanted to comment.
Cheryl?
Thank you. Yeah, and I want to just come off of what Mike Baden said. We are moving into a new era of ways we all do things, including how we move about, and accessibility there needs to be a lot more accessibility for more of us. And e-bikes for some people, cargo bikes and e-bikes represent livelihood, and much has been pitched about the trails, about how it's multimodal and how everybody can use them to get about and do their life, and it's not just recreation. And I certainly hope that we have ways for people to live their lives, because e-bikes are affordable, and we have a problem of people being able to afford mobility. Fewer people can afford their own vehicles. We don't have enough bus service. Hello, New York State. The state needs to be running transit like Jersey or something. This should not be on our local municipalities to have to handle, or an MPO. But we need to make way for pedestrians, bicyclists, and e-bikes, and all forms, and people in wheelchairs, people who have to walk slower with canes. Everybody has a right to the roads and to the trails. So we have to figure this out in a way that makes sense. And let's not do what we did with with the interstates, and we cut communities in half. With the New York State Thruway did to my little town of Rosendale, et cetera, et cetera. Let's do something different. Like too many people are dying on the roads. Thank you.
Cheryl, you're cutting out. We can't hear you.
She said thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. I didn't hear that.
We got it.
Okay. Anyone else remote? Any other comments remote?
I see no hands raised currently.
Thank you, Dave. So we'll move on. Next item on the agenda, approval of July 26, 2022 Policy Committee meeting summary. I have a motion for discussion purposes.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Morrow. Do I have a second?
Second, Mike Baden.
Thank you, Mr. Baden. I have a motion. Is any discussion? Any opposed? Any abstentions? So carried. Communications and announcements, Brian,
David?
David,
New York State DOT recently announced that the Bridge New York program funding amounts. And it's going to be a little bit of a different program this year than it has been in years past. Previously, New York State DOT ran the application process. And it was done through solicitation for projects. This year, the funding has been allocated directly through the capital program. And there is an allocation set for Ulster County of $8.59 million for bridge projects. There's 150 million statewide for the bridges, but we do have a set allocation amount. And then there's 50 million that's going to be set aside for culverts, but I believe that's statewide, and I think the review for that is going to be handled at the New York Region 8 level. But for the bridge projects, we will be handling the review process, and we're most likely going to be following the New York State DOT guidance. It's going to be very similar to Bridge New York as you've seen in the past, or our off-system call for or off-system bridge call for projects that we had done previously. There's no pre-review process that's required. Extra weight will be given if you have a PE review of your project. And we expect to get the application materials out for the first week of December is what we're anticipating. But we're most likely going to follow the New York State DOT guidance.
and we just say we will.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a lot
Yeah.
clearer if we just say that, that's what we're gonna do. Can you give us deadlines? I'm sorry, Herb, let's get through this. Can you give us deadlines, Dave?
Oh, geez, I had sent it out in the email. I can't remember them
I
off
have
the
them.
top. You have them? Sandra, thank you.
Yeah. So we're looking for next week for all the MPOs to confirm their planning process, so it sounds like you're there. We also will need some names from you folks for the scoring team. Okay, so that by Wednesday of next week, if you could, please. And then applications are due, bridge applications are due on January 20th, and then you have to make final selection by like April 1st.
And they're due where on the 20th? They're due at the MPO level?
So if you decide to follow the planning process in the guidance, folks would submit their application to the Bridge New York email address for Region 8. But that's at your discretion. Have you made a decision on that?
I think we want to submit both. I think we wanted to submit to you folks and to submit to us as well. That's, I think, our guidance.
That's absolutely fine, and we'll make sure that we carefully coordinate that.
Yeah.
So if someone only submits to one, we'll
Yeah.
make sure we
Yeah.
cover that. Okay.
Yeah, that way we have a sense of what's coming in and we know whether or not we have to sort of beat the bushes to make sure that we have enough applications, not that we find out at the last minute we don't have enough applications to cover the amount of funding we have.
Sounds good.
Anyone disagree with that approach? Anybody on the phone, on the remote disagree?
See no hands.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Is
Ed?
that now spread over a number of years, or is that?
No. It's 2 years worth of funding, as I understand it, and there's supposedly another round, and how that will be released, I think, depends upon the success of this round.
So we would expect state and local agreements signed next federal fiscal year.
April.
This federal, it's not like a 5-year plan, but that's a number.
No. Mr. Litz?
In past years, if there was a submittal that was not selected in that year, and it was resubmitted the following year, or even the following year, or the following year, there were extra points given for not obtaining their selection in the previous year. Is that still gonna hold?
I don't have an answer for that. We'll get back to you on that, for sure. I don't have an answer for that now. I'll just leave it at that. There
I
is,
know a lot of the towns, after they submit it once or twice, they forget it, I'm not gonna submit anymore because it's not gonna go anywhere.
well, in this instance, remember, you have an allocation to the county or to the MPO. And that allocation is almost $9 million, 8.9
5-9.
million rounded up. So.
But I think it would be good for the towns to know that.
And that'll go out in our release. The other question that I wanted to ask is that you heard Senator indicate that names for those folks that want to review. Is there anyone on the council that wants to help review applications? We do have enough people now to review, but I just want to make sure to open it up if anyone on the council wants to review. I know John Schulteis has been voluntold to help us, give us a hand from the city of Kingston. So thank you, John.
Yeah, this is Mike Baden. I would be willing, as long as it wouldn't be a conflict of interest. I don't think we're going to be applying at this point. We have enough on our plate with the current project, but if you need another set of eyes, I'd be willing.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm already on.
Count you twice. Thank you. The other question I just wanted to ask is out of that funding, I believe a certain amount of it has to go to off-system bridges. And that amount carries through, it's not on a statewide basis, it's on an individual MPO basis. Is that correct?
I think they're looking for statewide 2/3 of funding to be programmed on officer bridges.
So when you folks receive the announcement, just be aware of the fact that we'll be able to just show you and tell you what bridges would be all considered off-system bridges. Most of them
The
are.
local ones,
They're-
yeah.
County ones that have already been done.
I don't think that's gonna be a challenge for Ulster County.
Yeah.
I think
Right.
for some of our counties in the southern half of the region.
Okay.
Do we know what neighboring counties were allocated?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
every county in New York State was given a planning project.
Do you know those numbers? I didn't see it on the website. I was curious. We
I can share
it. Ulster counties was larger than.
Yeah.
So the way they figured out the planning target, was they did try to factor in
The number of
number
bridges.
of bridges and the condition of those bridges without penalizing those counties that have invested heavily in their bridges.
Yeah, the only thing I saw on the call for project was upstate, Hudson Valley, and the city, and I'm assuming we're in the Hudson Valley segment of that, and it looked like we got a lot less than other portions. The culverts. No,
Right.
it's for the allocation of the bridge program.
Yeah, I know we got,
Upstate was around 150 million or so, if I recall.
I know we got a larger allocation than Dutchess and Orange. I know that's the case. So,
Do we know, are there gonna be the same procedures as the Better Way project?
Yes.
It's gonna be a little bit easier?
Yes.
No, it won't be any easier.
it will be a lot easier. We have a very active and engaged local projects unit.
We do.
I'm
Or-
serious.
No, they really did. They
Yeah.
did a great job.
And then culverts, is that the state process though? Is that state funding?
Yeah, that's 100% state funded for the culvert.
Still going through LPU though,
So, yeah,
still design report and all that.
yeah.
Okay.
And the culvert program is a little different. Today, we just sent out, a follow-up email, just clarifying with all the municipal officials in the Hudson Valley that the culvert application definitely goes to the Bridge New York email address. And they will be reviewed and scored and, selected through the New York State DOT regional office. We're working right now on building a scoring team too. So if there's anyone in Ulster County that's interested in being on the culvert scoring team, let me know. And the due date for the culvert program are different, so that's another reason we sent out that follow-up email today, just to make sure folks are noticing the difference between the two programs on due date.
Thank you, Sandra. Anything else on the Bridge New York program? I would urge everyone on the council to speak to your highway superintendents, anyone on the phone. Speak to your highway superintendents, make them aware of this. We will be sending emails everywhere, both to the town and supervisors and mayors. And as well as to the highway superintendents elected at the town level. So they're aware of it. Now is your chance to apply. I would hate to find ourselves in a situation where we are concerned about the lack of funding for bridges and don't make applications for this funding. And this is 95% funding.
And
Just-
100%. I think
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah. So it's 95% funding. So I mean, it's literally, really important that we apply. Any questions on that? Any comments from council members? Okay. Any other communications and announcements?
I have two brief ones, just a reminder, UCTC did send out the Unified Planning Work Program call for planning project proposals. And that was sent out about 2 weeks ago. Deadline is December 9th. I've received a number of inquiries from members, so I'm very encouraged to see municipalities interested in the Unified Planning Work Program and thinking about corridor studies and other types of feasibility studies. Please reach out to me if you have any questions on that process. And also, since we're talking on the subject of culverts, I'd also like to point out under agenda item 6, we have the USDOT as the notices of funding opportunity link. That is linked on the UCTC webpage as well. This has all the latest federal funding programs as they're announced. Everything is listed there in a timely fashion. There is also a new federal program for culverts addressing barriers to aquatic species passage. That was announced. It's being administered by the US DOT, somewhat unusual. I believe that's an 80-20 cost share, but if you do live in a estuary municipality like the town of Esopus, anything bordering the Hudson River, this may be a program that would work for you. I would urge you to reach out to me and we can put you in touch with professionals at our Department of the Environment as well, who have been working on this topic for a number of years.
Yeah, and they have, for, I almost believe it's all of the culverts in the county, certainly all the major culverts in the county, they have condition ratings as well as ratings relative to their ability for aquatic passage. So if anyone has any questions or needs additional guidance with respect to that, give us a call. We'll put you in touch with somebody that can address that, but there is online resources relative to those culvert questions. Any questions on the culvert stuff and Brian's announcement? Brian, do you have anything else?
No, thank you.
I want to get back to one of our guests today that asked a question about Kings Highway. I don't think we answered it. It had to do with traffic counts. So David, if you could update us on traffic counts and what we're doing, I appreciate it.
Yeah, we had taken a look at traffic counts there at that location, the trends over the years, and it kind of gone up, dipped, but based off the comments that we received, I think we're going to schedule a traffic count in the area come for spring. And we'll be doing truck, classification, speed count as well, just to make sure that we have the most current data and not just a modeled or historic data at that location.
Has the 2022 traffic count available online?
Not yet. There were a few that were running a little bit late. So I think 2 weeks ago there were still some out in around the Kingston area. But I have processed the bulk of them, have not published them yet.
And we do have classification counts in those, so we'll have some speed data with respect to that.
Classification and speed, yeah.
Yeah, so what I don't know whether anyone has looked at Dutchess County. Dutchess County does classification counts and speed counts, and they combine them with accident data. And so they look at high speeds, high accident locations, and it suggests some areas where there may be need for enforcement, or there may be need for other kinds of discussions relative to that roadway. So it's sort of like the first step screening process that's out there. I would say that the county, the transportation council's work on the road safety program did a lot of that work as well. Anything else on communications and announcements? Anything from council members? Hearing none. New business, item A, UCTC resolution 2022-17, distribution of federal fiscal year 2022 Federal Transit Administration, section 5307, 5340, urbanized area apportionments attributed to the city of Kingston. I have a motion for discussion purposes. Thank you, Mr. Pine. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Morrow. I have a motion and second. Discussion, Brian?
Just clarification, this is attributable to the Kingston urbanized area, not the city of Kingston. This is the final outstanding FTA apportionment that is available to designated recipients in Ulster County. There being one, and that is Ulster County government operating UCAT. This is funding attributable, as I said, to the Kingston urbanized area for federal fiscal year 22 in the amount of $1,299,525. Once approved, all of our apportionments will be approved and available for spending by the transit provider.
Any questions? Any discussion from the council members? Mr. Litz?
Senator, they have they made a public appointment for a new UCAT director?
Oh, I couldn't answer that question. I don't know. I know. The question is, if everybody heard it, is there anything going on relative to the UCAT director? We now have an acting director of UCAT. Tony Roger was moved into that position. But I don't have any further information on that. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So carried. Thank you. Resolution B, resolution 2022, item B, I'm sorry, resolution 2022-18, support for the New York State Department of Transportation, NISDOT, targets for safety performance measures. Do I have a motion for discussion purposes?
Second.
Mr. Morrow, sorry, John, Mr. Falk moved and Mr. Morrow seconded. Brian?
I'd again like to draw everyone's attention to the fact sheet that accompanies resolution 2022-18, which I think very succinctly summarizes what is a relatively complex process, but we've been doing this for a number of years now. The purpose of this resolution is to keep Ulster County Transportation Council in line with our performance management requirements, which came into effect under MAP 21 in 2013, and the rules of which I think were finalized in 2016, 2017. So each year, MPOs statewide are required to declare either their own safety targets for the national highway system, or to utilize New York State Department of Transportation's safety targets as set forth in the highway safety plan. All 14 MPOs statewide continue to recognize New York State DOT targets rather than create their own targets. The process for establishing those targets is outlined in the fact sheet. And essentially, we have a 5-year rolling average. Each year we drop the oldest year of data available and adopt the latest year of data available in order to set that 5-year average. So the 5-year period right now is 2016 to 2022. We set a forecast, and there is a cap set on the amount of percentage change that can be allowed, and that 1% cap makes sure to allow for any huge variances in data. If there's a big jump up or down, it's not held against the state or the MPOs. The 5 areas that the targets are set for are the number of fatalities, the rate of fatalities per utilizing vehicle miles traveled on the highway system, number of serious injuries, and the rate of serious injuries, as well as the number of non-motorized fatalities and non-motorized serious injuries. These are statewide figures, not Ulster County figures, used for transportation management purposes.
Any questions from council members? Comments? Hearing none, any opposed? Any abstentions? So carried. Thank you. Item C. Resolution 2022-19 amendment to the state fiscal year 2022-2023 Unified Planning Work Program to amend existing planning projects. Can I have a motion for discussion purposes?
Only.
I have Mr. Volk moved, Ed, you second, Mr. Pine seconded. I have a motion and a second. Brian?
Yes, there were two projects that were identified as priorities through for a variety of reasons, and those projects are requiring amendments on the Unified Planning Work Program. So that we can prioritize that work during this current state fiscal year. The first project is a request that originated from Ulster County Area Transit to perform a transit network assessment. This essentially would engage in a process to consider transit system optimization, route optimization, which utilizes proprietary software to identify the most efficient routes that the transit provider can use in both rural and urbanized areas. And it can also be used for routing of paratransit. So the scope of work would involve finding a eligible vendor that can provide both planning and software support services for the transit provider. So if that funding is approved, we would then issue a request for proposals to search for a qualified vendor to do that work. I'm sorry, I skipped ahead. That was the second amendment that was attachment 2. The first one.
Well, can we stay on the second for a
Sure.
question? Just any
Sure.
questions on the second amendment? I have one, and that has to do with you conducted an independent cost estimate on this, is that correct?
That's correct. I have been utilization of FTA 5303 funds, planning funds, requires MPOs to do an independent cost estimate. I've received 2 quotes, not quotes, but essentially responses from organizations that have done similar work.
Okay.
And it is within the same price range.
And the council should be aware that we're in discussions with respect to UCAT through both the new acting director and the executive staff relative to the scope of the project, because the scope was originally developed with the prior transit director, and so we want to make sure that we continue to be on the same page. Thank you, Brian. Any questions on the first? Any comments? Hearing none of the First Amendment, Brian?
Right, so that was attachment 2. I apologize for taking them out of order. Attachment 1 on page 2 of the resolution addresses an amendment for the City of Kingston Rail Safety Program. This would be a planning study that we will engage with WSP with. David Stoss will be the project manager for this project. And we received a number of cost proposals, and we're able to negotiate a revised cost proposal with WSP for $149,215 to perform the scope of work included in that study. Dave, do you want to give a brief overview of what that project will include?
That project's going to look at the 6 grade crossings in the city of Kingston, as well as we're not just limited to those locations. We're also looking at the entirety of the corridor, the CSX corridor through the city of Kingston to look at trespass crossings that are occurring, which is something that we haven't really looked at previously, and we've been seeing a fairly high prevalence of within the city of Kingston. So with that study, we're going to be working on quite soon. We have WSP has signed. We are just waiting insurance before we can sign. We'll be getting that out shortly.
Any questions? Any comments?
I should also note that the reason why we are in the Unified Planning Work Program in this manner is because the cost changes are greater than 25% of what was originally programmed in the Unified Planning Work Program, and our operating procedures stipulate that we need to make those changes in the resolution. We did advertise publicly the changes and we received no public.
So on amendments 1 and 2, resolution number 22-19, any opposed? Any abstentions? So carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes our resolutions. Now we move to other old business. Brian?
Yeah, I believe I covered most of these under announcements. Again, the Unified Planning Work Program call for projects is open, deadline of December 9th. That's a Friday. Please contact me or Dennis to have a discussion if you have any proposals in mind for these are for planning studies only. Unified Planning Work Program funds can only be utilized for planning, not engineering or capital expenditures.
And to date, we've received how many at all or some?
I haven't received any, just a few inquiries
Okay.
regarding possible ideas and all of which were very encouraging to hear. I also announced that the link for the latest funding opportunities is available. So if you do have a question about funding, that's the easiest link to go to find the latest information. The Ulster County Traffic Safety Board has been meeting monthly. And the next meeting is scheduled for Monday, December 5th. Both meetings are held in person in the Ulster County Legislative Chambers at 6 p.m. And finally, project updates. I can provide 3 brief updates. We have issued a request for proposals to update our website. So this would essentially involve rebranding the UCTC domain, utilizing the design parameters that were established through the long-range transportation plan, our new logo and colors and things of that nature. So the website will be updated. Hopefully that project will begin early next year. The deadline for that is quickly approaching. I think that's tomorrow for proposals to be submitted.
I mean, there's other reasons to do the website update besides just the rebranding. I don't want to leave the council with that impression. I mean, we do have some problems relative to meeting the federal standards, particularly some of the ADA standards in terms of colors, translations and stuff like that.
Right. The organization of the website is not ideal either. It's gotten a bit away from us. It's gotten to a point where it would take almost more time for staff to reorganize the existing website. And it might be easier to start fresh, which is a way of thinking. So we should have that contract will be going forward next year. The 9W corridor management plan in the town of Ulster is very much underway. But we don't have a public facing web page or information page for this study yet, but we should have one forthcoming. This corridor management plan will be looking at the 9W corridor in the town of Ulster from essentially the signal at the Aldi Center, heading north all the way to Bread Alone at Lakes Mills Road. And we're engaged with Creighton Manning engineers assisting us with that study. We have not yet reviewed and approved the public engagement process associated with the study. There will be a lengthy public engagement process associated with the study. So I've received a number of inquiries from members of the public about when we will engage and in what manner, what sort of meeting schedule. That has not been reviewed or decided by the technical advisory committee at this time. So we're not ready to engage with the public. And as soon as we are, we'll be advertising that information very widely. Right now, we've just done initial data acquisition, doing counts at all the signals and intersections. The consultants are getting the timing plans from New York State DOT. DOT's been very cooperative, assisting us with the project so far. So there's a lot of data acquisition that is presently ongoing so that we can assess current conditions.
And they're doing pedestrian and bicycle movements as well.
That's correct.
Yep. Anything else on that study, Brian?
Nothing else on the 9W study at this time.
Any other updates?
Oh, the Ulster County Transportation Vulnerability Assessment, which we also call the resiliency study, that final recommendation report should be available by the end of the year. And we're looking at the final vulnerability assessment. We have a meeting scheduled for after Thanksgiving. And all this information is being put on the ArcGIS Hub, which is nearly ready for publishing as well.
How did that come into this call for culverts and bridges?
It's a good question. We've been kicking around the idea as well, because the vulnerability assessment looks at all road segments and bridges within Ulster County and does an assessment of criticality. How critical are those facilities in order to maintain mobility within the network? And it assesses them based on threats from flooding and also excessive heat. So we do have a prioritization, a ranking of all those facilities, but the QA/QC process, I don't think is gonna line up with the call for New York, Bridge New York project. We do, I think, want to do an internal assessment to see how the project proposals line up with the prioritization of the bridges that are listed through the vulnerability assessment. But right now, I don't think the end results are going to be ready so that municipalities could use it
That's okay. I
as
can-
part of the application, or that we could use it for scoring.
Good question.
Because I was saying you use it for next round, right?
Well, we had an internal, I'm sorry, Senator, I
It would be
interrupted
nice
you.
if If this scoring can be.
Right.
the draft and what we need.
Yes.
Certainly,
Yeah,
yeah, and that would be, that can be made available online through the ArcGIS hub, and that's the way that the hub framework is designed, so you can actually, there's an online mapper and a listing of those bridges.
oh, good. I hope.
So we have had an internal discussion as to whether or not how to incorporate that into the scoring criteria. I think internally we're agreed that where we are right now, it's probably not appropriate to incorporate it into as a factor. But all things being equal between two bridges, it would probably tip in favor of the bridge that has a criticality and a vulnerability assessment that's critical.
Mhm.
Yeah. Any other questions? Any other updates, Brian?
None that come to mind.
Before we adjourn, I just want to ask one question. We've seen a lot of renewed interest in quiet zones, both at the city of Kingston level and at the town of Ulster level. And so I just want to make everyone aware of the fact that we're starting to take a look at funding for quiet zones. And Senator, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but do you know whether there's any additional monies available, or how we will go about trying to find additional monies for quiet zones?
No, I don't know. But it's
Okay.
something
I'll send you a follow-up on that and ask that question. I know Dan is really busy on, Dan Coots is the coordinator at the Region 8 level. Quiet zone is essentially a way to try to make sure that trains going through crossings essentially do not have to blow their horns. It doesn't necessarily mean they won't. It just means they don't have to under federal statute. And it's usually, it is a physical improvement to the crossing. So that you can't go around the gates and those types of things. So that's what it's about.
I was a little bit involved with that, the Glen Area Lake Association.
As I've had a conversation with the supervisor, thanks.
They're talking about a cost of $500,000 to upgrade that crossing at Eastern Parkway and Glen Area Boulevard.
Yeah, that's typically what, we did a study on quiet zones many years ago, I should say. And the costs back then were in the $300,000 to $500,000 range, depending upon the complexity of the crossing and the size of the needed gates to essentially make sure that people can't go around them.
Because the train traffic there's gotten ridiculous. They've gone from 20 trains a day to 40, or close to 40,
Yeah.
between 30 and 40.
So that's one of the reasons I brought it up. The city of Kingston, through the mayor and through, I think, the engineering division, has also raised issues with respect to quiet zones as well, to revisit our work. We're just trying to figure out whether there's any additional funding, particularly under the new Jobs Act, the new bill that's out there, whether there's any additional funding for quiet zones. Otherwise, I think it's a heavy lift.
So it makes the crossing safer.
It makes the crossing safer, and I mean, there's a substantial, I shouldn't say a substantial, the argument is that it makes it quieter. Although the engineers are not precluded from blowing their horns, they just don't have to by federal law. Anything else for the council? David, do we have any questions from those online? Anything in the chat that we should be talking about?
There's a number of chat messages that have kind of come through the meeting. Let's see here. As far as questions goes, I see there was one question back when we were looking at the safety targets, saying that everyone stayed home during 2020. Does that affect the stats? One kind of interesting thing with the trends, we did see more serious injury and fatal crashes that kind of occurred following the pandemic.
But that's why we use a 5-year.
And yeah, exactly. That's why I use the 5-year rolling average, but you do see a spike that's in there. So it's supposed to kind of normalize that out a little bit. Let's see here. Why are we paying for a consultant when the railway owner should be doing the work? I think regarding the rail safety work. More comments along that line. Cheryl wanted to emphasize the difference between microtransit and public transit route optimization, and looking to shift the focus on optimizing public transit and positioning UCAT to a public source. Let's see here, additional comments on CSX, for CSX, asking them to foot the bill, I think, for many of these improvements. Why isn't CSX covering these costs? And comments on the number of trains and asking for the governor to stop taking donations from them. I think I've covered all the comments that I've received via chat.
I'm going to do one last round of public comment. Any public comments from those in the room?
I am glad to hear it, and thank you very much that you're still on top of this. And for, I just need a little bit more on that, what Dutchess County and Orange County is doing. And you said that, for the Kings Highway corridor, there was another type of study or another aspect of the study that they added to their.
They're taking, and I'm not sure that Dutchess County is doing it. I know Orange County is doing it. I know that Dutchess County is doing it. They do what they call a roll-up of their high-speed locations as compared to accidents or crashes. And they put the two together and they start to characterize them as basically saying that where you have high speeds and high crash locations, it's probably a good thing to look further into that. So that's what you're looking at. And they do that by doing something called classification counts. And classification counts are different than volume counts. This transportation council shifted over to classification counts.
Primarily, probably about 4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
We still do volume only counts on low volume roads.
So the classification counts give you essentially not only the number of vehicles, but also the speed of the vehicles. And it also gives you the classification of the vehicles in terms of whether they're trucks or not trucks. They count axles.
Also, that's what I was going to ask about would that distinguish the trucks, because that gives you extra points on the tip, right? With
The short answer.
May I?
Sure, go ahead.
Well, you're referring to the tip selection criteria. We've already brought that up on several occasions. The tip selection criteria has never been used in the 11 years that I've worked with the transportation company, because we haven't done a call for projects using it. I would hope that sometime soon, and during the next tip update process, we would use the tip selection criteria. But when we do, it'll be updated. So it's not directly relevant to the discussion. I think we would use it as a framework. And certainly that information could be factored in the selection of projects going forward. But right now,
but with this study expanded a little bit, you would have that information already. You wouldn't have to go back and say, now we have to do trucks and whatever.
that's right.
And I want to reiterate, we are doing work. We're going to be conducting a count in that location. We're going to be looking at the location a little bit more in depth. Dennis, what he's referring to, the Dutchess County work that they do, it's a systemic look. So they're taking a look at the traffic counts that they did for that year. It's not their entire system. They're looking at the speeds that are there, and then they're comparing that against the crashes. In the case, you guys have a very specific concern along a roadway. We're going to be looking at that directly. So we do also take a look systemically through our network screening. through the road safety plan work. So we do address things at a network level as well.
I just, know that in the particular area of Kings Highway, where I live, we have a recycling, facility now. And it's a very, deceiving curve. And when you're going, south, you tend to be going at 55 miles an hour or more. And if a contractor's coming out, you're not just stopping for that truck, but they have a trailer many times in back of them. And like I said, in the last 2 months, there's been at least 2 cars that have been pulled out of there because they just couldn't make the turn and have their friends pull them out or the police called or whatever, but it's something, you know, even the speed being reduced, I appreciate it's not a high speed area, but you're coming in from a flat straight stretch at 55 into an area now that has a little bit of questionable activity there.
Thanks, Barbara. We'll talk a little bit more offline.
Okay, cool.
Thank you. Any other comments? I didn't say that.
Is it safe there?
I just have one point of clarification under adjournment. The next meeting would be a technical committee meeting. I have no new business for the month of December. So at this point, I don't know if we'll have a meeting in December, but the date is correct. Our next UCTC meeting, assuming we postpone December, will be January 10th.
And I just want to remind everybody 2 things before we adjourn. One is that make sure that you consider any UPWP projects that you want to put to the council as soon as possible. And 2 is please do not forget the Bridge New York program and working with the Transportation Council and the highway superintendents in order to make sure that we get the bridge projects in. Anything else? Hearing none, everyone have a great holiday. Enjoy your Thanksgiving, enjoy your Christmas. We don't see you, and stay healthy. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.